Some court cases are about money, some are about rules. But every once in a while, a case enters the courtroom that is really about something deeper. On this day, a young man stood before the judge insisting he had done nothing wrong. Across from him sat a mother who said her trust had been completely shattered. What looked like a simple dispute quickly became a lesson about responsibility, honesty, and consequences. Because this judge wasn't just listening to words. She was listening for the truth behind them. And before the hearing ended, one question changed everything. The plaintiff began her story quietly, but every word carried weight. She explained that the defendant had entered her life during one of the most unstable periods he had ever faced. He had lost direction. His finances were failing. And according to her, he had reached a point where even close friends had started stepping away. She saw someone struggling, not someone irresponsible. She believed he needed support more than judgment. So she made a decision that many people make when compassion overrides caution. She opened her home to him. It was not a business arrangement. There were no documents signed or conditions written down. It was an act of trust. She gave him a place to stay when he had nowhere else to go. A safe environment where he could rebuild stability and regain control of his life. At the beginning, everything appeared hopeful. He expressed gratitude. He promised that the situation would only be temporary. He assured her that once he found steady work, he would begin contributing and repay whatever help he received. She believed him. There was no rent requested during the first weeks. No strict deadlines. No constant reminders. Only one expectation existed. Respect the opportunity you've been given. She described how she believed encouragement would motivate progress. She wanted him to succeed, not feel pressured. Days passed peacefully at first. He searched for jobs, or at least said he did. Conversations revolved around plans for improvement and future independence. But slowly, small changes began to appear. Job searches became less frequent. Plans became vague. Updates turned into excuses. Weeks turned into months. The temporary arrangement quietly became permanent without discussion. Utility bills began rising. Groceries cost more. Daily expenses increased in ways that could no longer be ignored. Still, she remained patient. She reminded herself that recovery takes time. She believed progress was happening even if she could not clearly see it. According to her testimony, promises continued to be made. He said interviews were coming soon. He said opportunities were close. He reassured her repeatedly that repayment would happen once things improved. Each promise created another layer of expectation. She occasionally provided small financial help as well. Money for transportation. Money for necessities. Support given not out of obligation but belief. But belief, over time, began to feel one-sided. The promised changes never arrived. No stable employment appeared. No contributions were made toward shared expenses. And conversations about responsibility slowly became uncomfortable. She explained that communication started changing. Where there had once been appreciation, there was now defensiveness. Simple questions about plans or timelines were met with irritation rather than reassurance. The atmosphere inside the home shifted. Tension replaced gratitude. Silence replaced conversation. She described moments when days would pass without meaningful discussion. Avoidance became routine. Bills continued to increase while accountability seemed to disappear. Eventually, she tried to clarify expectations directly. She reminded him of the earlier promises. She asked for a realistic plan moving forward. According to her, the response surprised her. The defendant claimed the arrangement had been misunderstood from the beginning. He believed the help was unconditional. He believed she had offered support freely without expecting repayment or contribution. In his view, there had never been an agreement. What she understood as temporary assistance, he interpreted as generosity without obligation. Two completely different realities now existed between people living under the same roof. One believed she had extended temporary help built on mutual respect. The other believed he had received permanent support without responsibility attached. Those opposing interpretations slowly damaged the relationship beyond repair. The plaintiff explained that disappointment replaced patience. Not because she regretted helping, but because she felt her kindness had been taken for granted. She said she did not expect perfection. She only expected effort. As questions continued in court, the deeper issue began to emerge. This was not simply about unpaid money. It was about expectations that had never been respected. The judge listened closely throughout the testimony. She allowed both sides to speak without interruption, observing carefully. Not just the words themselves, but the tone behind them. The plaintiff spoke slowly, choosing her words with care. Her voice reflected exhaustion rather than anger. She described sleepless nights spent wondering whether she had made the wrong decision by helping someone she trusted. Her disappointment felt personal, not financial. The defendant, however, spoke with confidence. He maintained that misunderstandings happen and that no formal rules had ever been established. Yet whenever questions focused on responsibility, his answers became indirect. He explained circumstances. He described challenges. He pointed to difficulties outside his control. But clear ownership of the situation remained absent. Each response raised more questions than clarity. The courtroom began to sense the imbalance. The issue was no longer whether help had been given. That fact was undisputed. The issue was whether gratitude had turned into entitlement. As testimony continued, a pattern slowly revealed itself. Responsibility was consistently explained away. Every missed promise had an explanation. Every delay had a reason. Every concern was redirected toward misunderstanding rather than accountability. Excuses replaced ownership. And gradually, the judge began to recognize something familiar. A situation where kindness had created opportunity, but opportunity had not been respected. The defendant framed events as unfortunate circumstances. The plaintiff described them as broken commitments. Two narratives existed, but only one aligned consistently with actions. The longer the discussion continued, the clearer the emotional divide became. This was no longer simply a disagreement about money or living arrangements. It was a story about trust slowly eroding over time. A story about how generosity, when met without responsibility, transforms into conflict. And as the courtroom absorbed every detail, it became clear that the case was moving towards something deeper than a financial dispute. It was becoming a question of character. Because when support is offered during someone's lowest moment, the response to that support reveals who they truly are. Then the judge leaned forward and addressed the defendant directly, her attention focused entirely on him. The courtroom had already heard both sides, but this moment felt different. It was no longer about gathering information. It was about understanding responsibility. She began by explaining something simple, yet often misunderstood. Opportunities are not guarantees. They are chances. A chance is given when someone believes improvement is possible. A guarantee is something earned through consistent action. And confusing the two often leads people into situations exactly like this one. She explained that when a person opens their home to someone in need, the act goes far beyond convenience. It represents trust placed into another human being. It represents risk accepted willingly in the hope that kindness will be respected. Offering shelter is not merely providing space. It is sharing stability. It is allowing another person access to safety, comfort, and dignity during a vulnerable moment. That kind of generosity carries weight whether anyone speaks about it formally or not. Responsibility does not suddenly appear because a contract exists. Responsibility begins the moment help is accepted. The defendant listened as she continued, maintaining that no written agreement had ever existed. He repeated that expectations were assumptions, not obligations. In his view, without documentation, there could be no requirement to repay or contribute. The judge challenged that idea immediately. She explained that integrity does not begin with contracts. It begins with character. Courts rely on written agreements because they prevent confusion. But human relationships have always depended on understanding long before paperwork existed. People recognize fairness instinctively. They understand gratitude without needing legal definitions. They know when support deserves effort in return. You do not need a signed document to understand respect. You do not need legal terminology to recognize when someone has invested trust in you. The courtroom grew increasingly quiet as her words continued. She began outlining the contradictions present in his testimony. Not aggressively, but carefully, step by step. He admitted receiving financial help. He admitted living in the plaintiff's home for an extended period. He admitted promising improvement and future contribution. Yet at the same time, he denied responsibility connected to those promises. Those positions cannot stand together. If promises were made, expectations existed. If help was accepted repeatedly, acknowledgement of responsibility naturally followed. The judge explained that accountability is measured by actions, not intentions. Intentions can sound sincere. They can appear convincing in conversation. But actions reveal whether those intentions were genuine. She noted that opportunities had been given repeatedly. Time had been provided. Patience had been extended far beyond what many people would offer. But patience without progress eventually becomes unfair. Accepting help while refusing responsibility damages more than finances. It damages trust. And trust, once broken, leaves consequences that extend far beyond the original situation. She explained that financial disputes can be resolved through repayment. But emotional disappointment lingers long after money changes hands. When someone chooses to help during another person's lowest moment, they are offering belief. And belief is one of the most valuable things one person can give another. Misusing that belief changes how people help others in the future. It makes generosity cautious. It turns kindness into hesitation. The judge made it clear that courts are not only places where rules are enforced. They are places where fairness is restored when understanding fails. After reviewing the testimony and considering the consistency of each account, she delivered her decision. Judgment for the plaintiff. The defendant would repay the agreed amount and fulfill the obligations he had repeatedly promised to honor. The ruling was firm but measured. It was not delivered with anger, but with clarity. The judge explained that the decision was not punishment. It was correction. Correction of imbalance created when responsibility is avoided. But the ruling did not end there. She offered a final message directed not only at the defendant, but at everyone listening. Life presents moments when someone believes in you before you believe in yourself. Moments when another person sees potential that you may not yet recognize. Those moments are rare. They arrive quietly and often during times of struggle. And when they appear, they carry opportunity disguised as support. How a person responds to those moments defines their character. Some people use opportunity to rebuild. Others treat it as comfort without commitment. The difference determines the outcome of their future. She explained that misuse of trust creates losses that cannot be measured financially. Money can be repaid. Time can move forward. But lost trust reshapes relationships permanently. When trust is broken, opportunities begin to disappear. People become cautious. Doors that once opened easily begin to close. The judge emphasized that accountability is not something courts create. It already exists within choices people make every day. Courts simply reveal it when disputes arise. This case, she explained, was not extraordinary because of money or legal complexity. It was important because it reflected a common human mistake, taking kindness for granted. She reminded the defendant that responsibility is not defined by convenience, is defined by fairness. And fairness requires acknowledging the impact of one's actions on others. The courtroom absorbed the weight of her words as the decision settled. The case itself was finished, but the lesson extended beyond the ruling. Responsibility cannot be forced into someone. It must be accepted. And on this day, accountability finally caught up with excuses. The court moved forward, but the message remained clear. Opportunities are gifts. Trust is earned. And character is revealed when gratitude turns into action.